If you are a fan of football tactics, you would have been excited to see if Arteta or Guardiola had something unique up their sleeve to get the better of the other. With a combined XG of just 0.96, this was an extremely tight game and one where the defences came out on top until the 86th minute when Martinelli scored the winner with a deflected shot. We could see Arteta's tactics were to be very aggressive down the right hand side, and this shows in the stats, with 59% of Arsenal's attacks coming down the right. Arsenal built up in a 2-3 shape, with Jorginho, Rice and Zinchenko protecting the back two. These three midfielders were very narrow most of the time, where they would look to control the centre areas of the pitch and push Ben White up on the right hand side. It looks like Arteta's plan was to target the right, perhaps because he felt that this is City's weaker side, where he doesn't have to deal with Walker's pace. By placing Jorginho on the right, Ben White was able to form an overload on the right, as he often formed passing triangles with Odegaard and Jesus. Although given opportunities to make a pass to the left-hand side, more often than not, Arteta's players would ignore this pass and choose a more difficult option down the right, where Arsenal were able to create a situation where they had a 3 versus 2. By forcing an overload here often meant that City would need to press this area, leaving space in behind. The tactic from Arsenal was to then release Jesus behind City's back line. On rare occasions, Arsenal chose to attack the left-hand side. Ben White remained in the midfield line, on the right with Jorginho central and Rice. In this situation, Zinchenko advanced down the left, but this didn't have the same effect as the right, and didn't produce any overloads, because Trossard moved infield. And whereas the support was provided on the right by Odegaard, Rice on the left remained in deeper positions. It would have been too risky for Rice to take up advanced positions and leave the back line exposed to Haaland's runs. In any case, the idea was to play in these spaces in order to attract City to that side. This had the tactic of leaving space on the right side for Jesus, who would take up positions out wide and cut into the spaces to get onto through balls. Despite having opportunities to pass the ball to the left with players in some space, this option was not taken, instead choosing to play the ball centrally. The position of Trossard, who would usually take up central positions near the halfway line instead of high and wide, shows Arteta's intentions. When his midfielders receive a pass, they don't look to open their body up and switch play. Instead, they keep their body position closed and pass back into more crowded areas. Arteta obviously felt the best way to enter City's penalty area was on the right with Jesus, one-on-one with the defender, or the overlapping fullback. Arsenal's 2-3 build-up shape had the perimeters to quickly become a 3-2 shape. When one of the defenders was in a wider position, that was deemed to leave the defence too exposed. City were less cautious in their build-up play, choosing to operate with both of their fullbacks taking up advanced positions in wide areas in order to stretch the pitch. The task of building up fell to Bernardo Silva and Kovacic, who at times played between the centre-backs. Silva, the deep-lying playmaker, in particular dropped between the centre-backs frequently, and this allowed one of the centre-backs to carry the ball into spaces either side of Arsenal's defensive structure. Silva and Kovacic are both extremely good at keeping hold of the ball, and maybe this is why City could risk pushing another player into Arsenal's half. The idea was for City to stretch the pitch horizontally. This was possible in the hope that gaps would open up between the lines, but Arsenal remained very compact in the centre of the pitch with a 4-4-2 block, which would often become a 4-2-4 block. The reason that this resembled a 4-2-4 at times was because the wide players pressed alongside the forwards to cut off diagonal balls to the fullbacks. Arsenal were very successful at cutting off spaces in the centre of the pitch, which was very congested. This meant though that there were spaces on the flanks that were targeted by the fullbacks on rare occasions. This was one method City used to penetrate Arsenal's penalty box. Arsenal's progression into the penalty box was more successful. Using the space on the right side afforded by City, Arsenal used Ben White's overlapping runs to create cutbacks. Whether it's a hangover from winning the treble last season, or the players are still getting used to Guardiola changing his system again, City are going through a tricky patch that might just be good news for the rest of the Premier League teams. However, Arteta will be believing that this year could be the year.